My name is Rachel, and I am a homeschooling mom of 7 years. And for 4 of those 7 years, we were involved in classical conversations. I honestly thought that we would do classical conversations until all of my kids had graduated, but then something changed and we left. On my channel, I love giving you guys real and authentic information about homeschooling. In fact, most of the topics that I come up with are things that I searched for as a new homeschool mom or homeschool mom along the way. So I'm trying to think of relevant topics that you may be searching for or have questions about. And one of those topics includes curriculum reviews, which may be why you're here today. You know that I'm going to give you lots of details with these curriculum reviews, and I'm going to be authentic and real, honest about my thoughts about them. That's not to say that my opinion is of the utmost importance, because it's just that. It's an opinion. So if that's the kind of homeschool information that you're looking for, then make sure you subscribe. And with that also, did you see my video of classical conversations pros and cons? I shared 13 really awesome things about CC, and I also shared 13 not so great things that they're probably not going to tell you at an information meeting. So make sure you check that video out if you have not yet. But in today's video, I'm going to share with you why we left classical conversation. I'm going to share why we joined, what changed, and why we left, what we gained from leaving. So here's my story. So first of all, I think I need to start with why I joined classical conversation and what sold me on this program. So I had been homeschooling actually less than a year. And I was struggling. We were doing My Father's World, but I started out my homeschool year and I didn't know YouTube had answers for homeschooling. I kind of felt like this homeschooling thing isn't exactly what I envisioned in my mind. And I was struggling getting through all of the curriculum.
Did not know that you don't have to do all of it for 3rd grade.
But that's neither here nor there. So I had a friend who was doing classical conversations, and we had talked, and she was telling me about it and invited me to an information meeting. I went to the information meeting and I left that meeting like,
oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want.
I want a community of like-minded moms. This classical education thing, this is how we all learn. Like, it made so much sense to me. And then all of the really interesting things that they brought up about what CC involves and the fact that they met weekly. Like, I wanted friends. I wanted to meet other homeschool moms. A lot of my friends from my church did not homeschool, so they did not understand the journey. And quite frankly, I didn't even get a lot of questions about homeschooling, so it just kind of made me feel even more lonely in that way. And I wanted friends. I wanted a community. So they encouraged us, after you go to an information meeting, they would encourage you then to go and observe a community day, which I did. I left that community day gushing, and I went straight to my sister-in-law's house. Actually, I might have called her while I was at the community day saying,
you gotta see this, you gotta come see this.
What did I observe that totally blew my mind? I observed all these little kids from preschool through 6th grade singing this timeline song, which, if you know anything about classical conversations, they start from creation until the Twin Towers, and they list all of these timeline events through history. The song takes 15 minutes. I mean, 7,000 years of history in 15 minutes. I mean, it doesn't encapsulate everything, but all these kids knew hand motions, they knew all these timelines events. My mind was blown. And then going into their class and hearing them do all this memory work and watching them play games to quiz each other. It was very appealing to me. And then I attended the Essentials class, which I didn't realize this at the time, but the particular class that I observed had quite the cream of the crop of students. The papers that those kids were writing were phenomenal. Like, they read some papers out loud, and I was like,
I want my kid to be able to write like that.
I didn't think about, no, that kid's just exceptionally talented. Although, I mean, we did learn a lot of awesome strategies for writing papers, so the program is still very good. I think this was about February, March when I visited, so they were pretty far along into the year. They were diagramming sentences on the board. I had never seen this before in my life. I never learned to diagram sentences. This was a completely foreign concept to me. All of the parts of speech that these kids were pointing out and diagramming and everything, I was blown away because I was like, these kids are smarter than me. And then I went and observed a couple of challenge classes. And the Challenge A class, they were drawing out the systems of the body. So like, for example, instead of studying a picture of a heart in a textbook and learning all the different parts of the heart, they learned to draw it, because when you draw it and you have to know where the aorta comes in and the 4 parts of the heart and where the valves are, you learn it. I thought, I've never done that before. What a novel concept, to draw the systems of the body in order to learn it. And there was just great discussion in that class. Again, I thought, these 7th graders, so smart. And then I went and observed a Challenge 1 class, and they were doing this thing called integration. So they were talking about economics, I think, when I was observing. When they were talking about the economy and bringing in, for example, socialism, they had this jar full of marbles, and anytime they integrated with another subject to show that all subjects are connected and they're all connected to God, they had to put a marble in the jar, and when they filled the jar of marbles, they got some sort of reward. So it was incentivizing for them to think about different subjects during whatever discussion they were having. So again, economics, they were bringing it to history. What does history show us about economics and socialism and communism and all that? And they would bring it to God. What does the Bible say about whatever topic they're talking about? They were integrating it with math. It was just unlike anything that I've ever seen before, and it actually made me want to be a student again. So I left Community Day that day.
Like, we're doing this.
I don't care how much money this costs. CC causes some people sticker shock up front. To join the Foundations class is in the $350 range. I don't know the exact prices right now, but the Foundations class, which is pre-K through 6th grade, is $350-ish. There's application fees and stuff. When they get to 4th to 6th grade, join in addition to Foundations, they can join the Essentials class, which is another $350. And then when they get to Challenge, those classes are much more expensive. They're $1,200, $1,300-ish because it's a full year's curriculum. Foundations is only morning through noon. That was another appealing thing. But the community of moms and doing all the same things together, so that if you have a question, the mom knows what you're talking about because she's doing the exact same curriculum. All of it just sounded just wonderful. And I told my husband, we're doing this. I need this community. I can't worry about the money right now. God is taking care of us in so many other ways. I'm sure that we will figure it out. And at the time, I was actually earning a little bit of income writing resumes for high school students, writing their college resumes for them. So I did have a little bit of income coming in to help pay for that. So I was sold. So comment below if you've been to an information meeting, or you've observed a classical conversation day, but you've somehow been involved in the seeking out of information. What sold you on it? What drew you in? Or what turned you away from classical conversations? So comment below. Too many things for me to say what sold me on it. Even once I joined, I went to another information meeting called Window into Challenge, where they explained the challenge grades, which is 7th through 12th grade, and how that all works and how it relates back to Foundations and how different it is. And man, I was sold on that too. I was like, we're going to do this thing forever. This classical education makes so much sense to me. And I got to say, before I get into like why we left, it still does make sense to me. Everybody learns the same way. So it's not that I turned away from the idea behind the classical education. I still very much believe in that. It works. So what happened? So I mentioned I joined, one, because I was amazed at what they were doing, but I also joined because I wanted a community. I wanted to meet other homeschool moms because, like I said, some of the people in my church, if they've never homeschooled before, they don't necessarily want to talk about homeschooling. In that sort of way, you still kind of feel a little bit on the outside, and it's just nice to have a friend who understands the journey that you're on. And I do have a sister-in-law. She did join Classical Conversations with me. She had older kids than me, and she went, and it was exactly what her oldest kids were looking for also. So we did join together. Our first year in CC was like a dream. I did not tutor at all. I wanted to just kind of immerse myself into this new philosophy of education, new to me, philosophy of education, and I didn't want to have to worry about another job to do. So that first year, I just met so many wonderful moms. The Essentials class, again, I had those cream of the crop writers in there to be an example to my kids and to my oldest, and I just thought he's going to be such a great writer when he's in 6th grade.
He's going to be just like them.
And, you know, we had some field trips organized. There were some things organized outside of the community. It was a really fun time, and I looked forward to community every single week, and so did my children. And then the second year happened, and a new family moved in, and I really bonded with that mom. She had kids the same age as my oldest two, and we enjoyed hanging out with each other. And that year, I did decide to become an Essentials tutor. So it was a little bit more difficult up front because I had to go through training, and I had to learn what I was doing, but it was fun. Being that tutor, I learned so much about grammar because when you have to teach it, you have to know it. And I learned so much about IEW, which is why I can do those IEW comparison videos. But then the family that I was closest to moved away. They moved back to Texas. I can't tell you how bummed I was. And that next year in our community, something just changed. I don't know. It's just some of the families that I felt the most connected to moved out, like either they sent their kids to private school or moved out of state or whatever. And then some new families moved in, and it was just like the kind of group dynamics really changed a lot. That's all I can say. And then there started to be like little relational conflicts that started to come up that weren't there before. I don't remember ever having conflicts with anybody my first 2 years, and then this year there was just some tenseness that was starting to happen, and I didn't enjoy coming to community. The community makes or breaks your experience. So I was actually looking to switch communities. I was seriously thinking, I think it's just this community, and the people here I'm just not meshing with as well. I didn't feel like I had friends outside of community day, and that's really what I wanted. I'm not as concerned about friendships for my kids. I'm just not. I am of the mind, just like a marriage, when your marriage is healthy and happy, your children are healthy and happy. I feel the same thing with homeschooling. When mama is healthy and happy, it only makes the homeschool better. And we have all kinds of friends and cousins and stuff that we can have play dates with. So my kids have plenty of friends. So I wasn't at the community so that they could have friends. I was at the community so that I could have friends. And then their friendships was kind of just a little byproduct of that. I was looking to switch communities. I thought maybe that's just it. It's just this community has changed a little bit. It doesn't feel the same. I'm not enjoying coming. And then I was asked if I was interested in becoming the SR, which is the support representative, which is the person above the directors. So we had 3 communities in our area. I would be above all 3 of them and be the one to hire all the leaders for the communities. There's just all kinds of responsibilities that come with support rep, but that's just one of them. I knew that there was a need, and I knew that, wow, that's a really important job to hire the people who are going to be influencing our children. That is something that I would like to be involved in, because if somebody's going to have influence over my child, I want to know who those people are. And it'd also be an opportunity for me to share my testimony with others and to have deeper conversations about the Lord, because these people are directors, therefore they agree with the statement of faith. I wanted to have deeper conversations with people, because that's also the only thing that a real friendship's going to be based on anyway. And some of the directors were really difficult to get to know, because they are teaching all day. They have a short time for a lunch break, And after community day, you're kind of tired and you just want to get out. And so if there aren't outside activities where they're going to be involved, it's like I wanted to get to know these women and I couldn't figure out how. How do I have longer conversations? How can we get together outside? And so I was attracted to the support rep role in that way so that I could get to know these women better. My community at the time was the largest community. We were very close to capacity. I know one of our challenge classes had to turn people away. So we were a very, very full community. I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings by leaving the community. So I thought, I'm just going to leave well enough alone and we'll join this community again. Now I have a new role. I will be making new friends, right? Because I'm going to be more involved in what goes on everywhere. And that was kind of my thinking. And this is where it just kind of starts, for me, snowballing out of control. Okay? Earlier that year, I had already agreed to become the practicum coordinator, which is a lot of hours to help hire people and vet volunteers for all of the classical conversations practicums in our region, which is half of the state of Illinois. Okay, so it wasn't just my 3 communities, it was like for 10 different areas. Okay, so there was a lot of work for me to do that started after school was over, because now I had a summer job doing this practicum coordination, and quite frankly, it wasn't something I wanted to do. I kind of got talked into doing it again because I had done it the year before and I did not enjoy it. I felt like it didn't have a proper summer break and a proper rest, and I didn't enjoy it and I didn't want to do it again. But I'm one of those people that finds it hard to say no sometimes if somebody presses hard enough. And what I wish at this point in time that somebody would have recognized that they kept asking me and I kept trying to be a helper and kept saying yes, and recognize that they might be pushing it and I might be burning out soon. So I was the practicum coordinator, then I got hired as the support rep, which was a whole lot of training, including a 3-day trip across the country to go to training for this. I mean, like, it's a big deal. It's not local training. They also asked me to be the essentials tutor trainer for a couple practicums. So then I had to go through a whole other slew of training to be the trainer. And then I had to go to these practicums, 3 different ones, to train the essentials tutor. This is how crazy I am. I even said, you know what, I've been an essentials tutor for 2 years. I can probably do that too. I was going to be the essentials tutor too. Luckily, I came to my senses in the summer when I started seeing how much support rep training there was. I started to feel tired and say, you know what, I'm just going to concentrate on this job. So I did let somebody else be the essentials tutor. I started out the school year burnt out. I was burnt out from practicum coordinator, tutor training, and then training to be a support rep. All the training that you get for that is like they just throw so much stuff at you, and I had no clue how to fit all these pieces together. For my personality, if I don't see the plan and like the daily schedule of what I'm supposed to do, it really, really bothers me. Like, I need a task list. It was really difficult for me to manage my work because being a support rep, I had to have regular meetings with my directors. I had a lot of brand new directors who were struggling with their own workload because being a challenge director, in particular, you have to be facilitating these various strands all day. Therefore, you have to be very familiar with the strands. So maybe they have to read all the literature. They have to understand the lost tools of writing, for example. They have to plan the review games that they're going to do. There's just a lot of prep work. They go into creating their class time for their community day, and then they have all kinds of outside responsibilities. So I had some brand new directors who were struggling with their new responsibilities. I was brand new, struggling with all the things that I needed to do. The dynamics changed even when I went to community day. I felt like becoming the support rep, don't think it was intentional. So I'm not trying to say that anybody was being mean, because that's not it at all. But unintentionally, there were people that I felt like didn't really want to talk to me. And maybe some of those people were my directors, because they probably felt like they talked to me so much outside of community day that at Community Day, it's just kind of the sense I got. That's all I can say is I felt even more alone is I guess what it comes down to. I have all these responsibilities. I'm not enjoying coming to Community Day because I have all these outside responsibilities. And let me just tell you this, you can't serve two masters. The Bible clearly says that. I was giving so much time to managing all of these duties that I had, and some of them I couldn't control. Like classical conversations, in order to perform this part of your duty, you have to take all of these training classes. And some of the training classes, I felt like, I'm going to be honest, I felt like they were a waste of my time. I did. I felt like this really didn't help me in any way, shape, or form, and yet I was required to do it. And some of the training classes were like an hour, of my time. There was just a lot of stuff that I couldn't control my workload, I couldn't control my time, and something's got to give. And I started to feel like I was sacrificing my family. I was sacrificing homeschooling my kids. My son was in challenge. His workload was just a lot different than it was when we were in foundations. We got to challenge, and I realized the 3 years of essentials, he did not become the writer that I thought he would become. So that's when I started to be like, those people were just really talented writers. So he learned things, but he did not become like that writer. And in Challenge A, it became even more apparent that we had some deficits in our grammar knowledge. So then I'm starting to think the challenge program does not really teach grammar anymore. They kind of, at this point, you have to know it. And so then it's kind of up to mom to grade the papers and work on the grammar and all that. That was a big deal to me. I realized the 3 years of essentials, somehow we got through 3 years of essentials and there were just still a lot of gaps for my son. One of the duties of the support rep is to visit the communities in your area, because there are guidelines that Classical Conversation wants each community follow so that the communities are consistent across the country, so that if somebody moves in from another state or another community, they know what to expect and there is consistency, and you don't have all these rogue communities taking the Classical Conversation's name but making it something else. So I had visited these other communities in my area and realized, wow, they are so different than my community. Every community in my area had its own flavor, but there was one in particular that I was a little bit more drawn to, and it wasn't my community. They seemed to work more on developing relationships between the adults, and that's really what I wanted. So I'm feeling like burned out already because this job has become time consuming, and honestly I hadn't even got to the really time consuming part, which is the spring and summer part of the year. I hadn't even got there yet, and I was already, I actually came to community one day and was crying tears to one of my friends who I am still friends with. When you talk about homeschool mom burnout, when somebody asks you how you're doing with the job and you're like sobbing because you're just feeling that much stress, that's not good. So I'm feeling like this is time consuming. I'm seeing gaps in my son's education and feeling like I need to address this, but I have all these other responsibilities to take care of. I'm feeling like I'm losing the joy coming to my community because it just wasn't the same as it was my first 2 years. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't the same for me. And then the pandemic hit. So I'm feeling all this stress. Oh boy. And then our world is going through something we've never gone through before. And I have to admit, the first time they said
2 weeks to slow the spread, you're gonna stay home,
I actually was like, oh, thank God. I can slow down. I can take a breather. I need to not feel like I'm constantly moving. But during that time, all of a sudden, we've got to figure out how to do community over Zoom. And I got stressed out, directors everywhere, and figuring out how we're going to do this, how we're going to end the school year, because 2 weeks came and went, as you know. And then I'm trying to get ready for summer practicum. We're trying to get a building. We're trying to plan this, but yet we don't know if we're going to have practicum because, well, nobody's allowed to meet over, a group of 10, whatever it was. There was just so many unknowns. And then I had directors leaving. And so I had to find new directors and kept asking. In my community in particular, will you direct? Will you direct? Will you direct? And everything kept just like falling, like nobody wanted to. I felt like I was trying to twist people's arms, and that didn't feel right either. And then my sister-in-law told me that she wasn't going to join. And I gotta say, when she told me she wasn't going to join, that did not affect my decision, because I was just kind of like, okay, you gotta do what you gotta do. But she got me thinking. I asked her like why she wasn't joining, like what made that decision. And she started kind of talking about curriculum. Like she wanted freedom to tailor her child's education to that particular child. And Cece worked for her older two. It worked for their personalities, but her third child, she wasn't enjoying it, and she just felt like it was taking something away from that child's experience. It just kind of made me step back and think, wow, I thought she would be in it till the end. Maybe I need to step back and think. You know, now I'm into April, May time frame, and I started feeling so much pressure, because when you are hiring a director, first of all, let me tell you, I had to do multiple interviews with each candidate. Some of the candidates I went through hours of interviews with, and then they ended up not directing. I didn't get paid by the hour. Your pay is kind of set depending on how many directors you're hired and how many students join. It just felt like I have a lot of hours on my plate here. The money certainly wasn't even close to being worth what I was giving up. The Lord provoked me with the verses that say, lay aside every weight that is encumbering you and run the race that is set before you. So lay aside the weight, run the race. I had read that in the Bible, and all of a sudden I said to myself, what is weighing me down right now? What am I stressed about? And I was stressed about being a part of classical conversations in so many different ways. I was stressed at all of my responsibilities. I was stressed about, I felt a responsibility for other people who are struggling, and I sincerely wanted to help them. I wanted to help the directors. I wanted to be a part of the solution. And I was being weighed down by all this extra time that I was giving to something that wasn't my homeschool. And I said to myself, what is my race? My job is to homeschool my kids. CC is not my job. This is not my responsibility. This is not what I'm called to. And do I need classical conversations to homeschool my kids? And the answer was no, I don't. I'm not even enjoying it right now. What actually pushed me over the edge, because if this hadn't happened, if the pandemic hadn't happened, and the potential of starting the school year in 2020 with this, or potentially having to go back to Zoom wasn't a potential, I might not have had the courage to walk away. But I felt strongly enough that I'm not going to have my kids sit there with masks on all day. I just can't do it. The masks thing was a big deal to me, and I didn't want to subject myself or my kids to staring at masks all day. And then CC does not work over Zoom, in my opinion. It did not work for us. The interactions is not the same at all. At all. I did not want to do it. It's a lot of money. And you paying for the interaction, and Zoom is not the same. And I didn't want to pay the same. But the thing is you can't reduce the cost if you're doing Zoom, because the directors are doing more work. When you're asking them to facilitate all this over Zoom, their job was harder, I felt like, than if they could meet in class. So you can't ask them to make less money. So it was just an impossible circumstance that helped me have the courage to set it aside for a year. We did not join classical conversations in 2020, but I had the mindset that we'll probably go back. So I tried to have my son continue with Latin, and we tried to incorporate some lost tools of writing again, just things to kind of make sure he was still going to be on par if we joined again. And the other thing is I kind of felt like this will also be a test to see what kind of friends I really have. I felt like I didn't make any deep friendships at CC except for the one family who moved back to Texas. And I reached out to a few people here and there throughout the year, just, you know, a little email saying hey, a little text saying happy birthday, and here and there. And I gotta say, I kind of felt like, yeah, I was right. I don't really have any friendships here. Nobody's missing me. Nobody's reaching out saying, hey, I miss you. Hey, do you want to meet for coffee? Nobody did that. So it just confirmed for me what I had been feeling all along. It wasn't anybody's fault, because I really, if any of my CC friends are watching, I'm not blaming anybody for this. Sometimes it's just personalities, sometimes it's different worldviews. I honestly feel like a lot of the people, they just had very busy and full lives. I was in a community where many of the moms had 4, 5, 6, and even 7 kids. Very, very busy. And they just didn't have time for more friends. The other irony that happened when I left is my community fell apart. We were the largest community because we didn't have people step up for the necessary director role, or we didn't have people qualified. They didn't have a foundations class that year, and then this year, same thing. So the community had to split and go to those other 2 communities. So I had the largest community in our area, and then like that, it was gone. What happened was I all of a sudden felt a freedom. I was excited to start school again. I was excited to not be like boxed in by what I thought we had to do. I had the freedom to choose what history we were going to do or what science I wanted to do. I had the freedom to plan my schedule however I wanted. I didn't realize that I was missing that. So I started off our 2020 school year with so much excitement, and that's when I started my YouTube channel. Throughout the year, just the freedom of curriculum. I also think that particular year was the first year in a long time where I hadn't felt a huge burnout. I had been homeschooling 5 years previously and had meltdowns every single year. When I was the SR was the biggest meltdown I ever had. It was just too much pressure. That year was such a joy. Our year doing our own thing. And then thinking about my son's high school and getting to choose his curriculum and tailor it to what I think his personality is and what he would like, and even ask him, what history would you like to learn about this year? The freedom is what we gained by leaving, and I did not realize how much we needed that freedom. So while I still wholly believe in classical education, the philosophy behind it, I still think classical conversations in general is a fantastic curriculum. It just was not a good fit for my child, and I definitely do not see the rigorous amount of work in the challenge grade being a fit for my middle child at all. So I don't think we'll be going back for that reason. But for my 3rd child, I've still kind of, I don't know. Honestly, I have thought about joining with my younger girls because they miss their friends, they miss the community, they miss the fun things about it, and I've thought about joining again because it was good for my son to have the discussion. So I did give it a good hard ponder, but here's the thing where I'm left with. In order to run a classical conversations community, you need leaders. You have to have people who are willing to come in and run it, and it's a lot of work. And if you're just going to come in and be a consumer, you're kind of like sucking the life out of some of the people that are there until they're so burned out they have to leave. And I felt like if I'm not going to come in and be a contributor, which I still am worn out from even thinking about CC. Like, I don't know that I've even completely fully recovered from the amount of burnout that I felt. Then you don't have the right to come in and take the energy from other moms who are doing it. They need to be supported and have some of the load taken away from them. But I also just feel like I don't have it in me to take on extra work right now. And so I don't feel like I can be part of the community. One thing that I do miss about classical conversations, and this is a really, really big one, I miss the way that they taught how to write. I miss it for my middle child because we're doing the good and the beautiful language arts now, but I still feel a pull going back to IEW to teach her the lost tools of writing. If you want to know more about IEW and lost tools of writing, check out this video because these are excellent writing programs that CC has embraced, it was definitely a perk of being there. I love CC. I loved it for what it was, but I love what we have now.